Wow, 2025, another phenomenal year. I feel like I'm getting to be on like a record, what do they call it, on a loop, like repeating myself over and over, but unreal how many amazing albums and how many tours came. Like, I feel like every other couple of weeks we got an announcement of so-and-so on tour, so-and-so on tour, so-and-so back on tour, this, that. So I'm always super grateful, but I think this was an exceptional year of just breathtaking, beautiful albums, insane tours, shows, so much kind of love and commitment among sort of everybody that was at shows and everyone that was hanging out and everybody that was, you know, going on to Bandcamp on Fridays and indie merch for sale. You know, everyone was really committed, I think, this year to not just the performance aspect, but the community aspect. And that was really, really, really cool and really inspiring. And it's not that there hasn't been community in years past, but I really felt a much more tangible sense of, you know, maybe it was the economy in the States being kind of messed up or whatever, but just let's be in this together, let's support, let's show up, and let's celebrate all this amazing music. We also lost a lot of people this year. Certainly the ones that there's so many musicians across so many genres this year that passed, but the ones that I certainly think the most of course, Ozzy and Thomas Lindberg of At the Gates and Brett Hines from Mastodon. I think about those folks probably in the most forefront of my mind, especially as a metal and rock fan. Brian Wilson, you know, for some of the more classic era folks, among others, so many others. So I think it was a little bit bittersweet for so many highs this year as far as production, content, music, shows, tours, vinyls, everything. Definitely lost some big ones. I think what gives me some peace and hope is knowing that while we'll never replace the Ozzies and the Thomases and the Bretts and everything, between the talent in the actual bands and the love, talent, and support in the communities, I do feel like the next sort of crop of greats are here and are alive and well and have a lot to offer for the next, hopefully, many, many years as well. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into these albums. There's quite a few that this year, each year, I'm increasingly relieved that I've given up on rankings because there's no way I could literally choose between some of these. But yeah, let's get started. Coming out of Denmark, Copenhagen, I believe, Phrenelith. Their album, The Ashen Womb, was one of my favorites for sure in 2025. It has that sort of really luscious classic death metal sound, a bit old school. Reminds me of one of my favorite bands of this style, Drawn and Quartered. Their record had one, it immediately picked, sort of, my brain was sort of caught by the album art. I love album art and design and stuff in that sense. And so I was like, oh, this big sort of fiery orange and yellow. I'm very much used to a lot of cooler colors with some of the death metal stuff, although we see all the colors and all the different sort of scales of design. But anyway, was attracted to the album art, checked it out, loved the sound. Some of the thrashier parts I didn't love, but I'm also partial to just an old school death metal sound that is still discernible. So I thought that was part of what made their album really special. Very scary sounding. If you've watched these videos of mine before, you know a little bit of fear in the way the sound is produced and the way it comes out. I'm not mad at a little bit of like, ooh, that's kind of scary. So a little bit afraid. The ambient parts and the atmospheric parts also make this a little bit lovelier and a little bit more unique and more of a standout than other sort of completely by the book classic death metal albums. They kind of reminded me of, I'm looking for there's a list of the songs I loved. The opening intro with No Amata is very, very gripping, and then my favorite songs are Nebulae, Chrysopia and the title track Ashen Womb, because it's a grounding, sort of familiar death metal sound, but then we have this transcendent exploratory space as well. So very much enjoyed it, thought it was very complete. And this, I think, is their third album, so they're young, but they're coming out with a nice punch. And I think some of the Scandinavian countries are, depending on what scene or what sort of blogs or whatever you read, sometimes countries like Denmark are placed in a mellow death or a, industrial or whatever category sometimes, but this is a nice sort of classic death metal surprise coming from them, and I really loved it. Observers of the Inevitable, Celestial Scourge, hello, oh my gosh. So another younger band from Norway, super techie record in 2025. I don't know where this is in their discography. This might be the second full length for them. Super brutal, super powerful. I loved the fact that songs like The Advent of Deities, even though it's an opening track, it brings sort of this mystical quality. It reminds me of, there was an album, a couple of years ago by somebody else. I think it was called Bodhi Tree or Bodhi something or other, Bodhi something or other. It reminded me of them a little bit. Not quite as psychedelic as them, but still that hybridized, technical, sort of spacey, but then also very intellectual in the theme. And the album being called The Observers of the Inevitable really struck me a lot, because I think, I'm not a super young person, but I know one of the big frustrations philosophically in the world with younger people, especially older people too, but is you sit back and you watch certain things unravel, whether it's in your country or region's politics, economies, healthcare, like climate, like whatever it is. When you're just a normal citizen and you sit and you do what you can individually, but you kind of watch some stuff deteriorate and the inevitable crash out of X, Y, or Z institution or whatever, like it's a very frustrating and emotional and not linear kind of experience. And I think the way this album plays with that theme lyrically, and then the brutality and the technicality bouncing around all of that with all those themes. I'm just looking at the track list, because like the way even the Advent of Deities to me is a beautiful sort of image to start an album like this. The beginning of cosmic savior, deity gods and goddesses that are supposed to maybe protect us from the inevitable, and then we're still ending up in these kind of messy crash out situations. But even going through track 2 is called Vessels, being a human being in the middle of all this, you're a vessel of either good or evil or something in between, and trying to do the best you can. Then we have the songs Exterminated and Wandering Waste of Oxygen, and then Insectoid and Evisceration. Go from you're a human, you have this opportunity to try to deal with this inevitable situation, do what you can to make it better. We can't. So we end up kind of using oxygen and using our resources, but we can't really save the day. Then the bugs and the robots take over. That whole sort of arc is something that I feel in the music, and I really enjoy it. My favorite song, again, I love the opener, Advent of Deities, but I also loved the Optic Chasm and Assembling Deformities. So as we kind of reach that descent portion of the album, after the bugs take over and stuff, music is really powerful, really beautiful, excellent technique, of course. And again, I'm excited that this is a younger band, that possibly this is only their second or third album. I'm excited to see what they do. And I think in a year like this one, really apt and really relatable and really beautiful, beautiful music. This Buried Realm album, holy smoke, what a huge piece. Huge piece of art, huge piece of so many different sounds and techniques and really memories. This album really, I know Buried Realm has a pretty extensive discography. They're not like brand new, but I don't listen to them super regularly, but whenever they have something new, or if I catch something new by them, it takes me back to like the days of middle school and high school, listening to Scar Symmetry and some of those aughts technical melodic bands coming out of like Sweden and stuff. Even reminds me a little, some of the driving beats and stuff also remind me of Fear Factory. But just a lot of really, again, punchy, strong energy in this album. Kind of an epic technical death metal sort of sound with some symphonics, and that sort of, those symphonic touches are really what take me back to, again, the old Scar Symmetry. And although I don't know, they're not orchestra synth, they're not, whatever, tangents, but there's just a lot of walls of sound and crazy mad, epic, powerful chords and just great solos and just a lot of fun. The Dormant Darkness to me it makes me think back to Observing the Inevitable, that theme of the other, I'm drowning in all my notes, but Observing the Inevitable, which was Celestial Scourge's record. Similarly, the Dormant Darkness lyrically and sort of thematically in the text, thinking about what hides in the dark, what kind of lurks in the dark, what is maybe not apparently evil or at surface level evil, but is certainly undermining us from the inside, is definitely something I thought about. And I love the album art, the sort of purple pyramid looking album art with the sort of chewed out pyramid. Such an apt metaphor, you know, which takes me even back to some of the stuff Imperial Triumphant talks about with, you know, the degradation of the metropolis and the evil of the gold on the buildings, you know. A lot of those, unfortunately, ideas are so applicable as an existential thought process at this time in history. And even, you know, one of the bigger songs was the futuristic Hollow Nation track. I think that's the second track. Sinister, but a great fucking song, you know. So there's always that interesting push-pull of these themes that are so validating and real and scary, but set to this incredible gymnastic music is just like a wild thing sometimes to think about. But Futuristic Hollow Nation was one of my favorite songs. The Futile Endeavor, another one. Again, apt title, apt theme, fantastic chords, great song. Where the Armless Phantoms Glide Part 2 was a very interesting song. I want to hear where the Armless Phantoms Glide Part 1. I need to like figure that out so I can put them both together. And then Jaws of the Abyss, you know. Really appreciated the sounds, the colors. I feel like the nod to the mid-aughts is as I get older, that's always just very moving, and I appreciate that a lot. As much as we love what's next and what's coming forward, those times and those memories are very special. So I really, really appreciated what Buried Realm brought to us this year. Oh man, the Dessiderium, the keys to the palace. What a beauty, what a beauty. I felt like this record was a watercolor painting that just soothed my soul in all of its beautiful, elegant, lyrical, meadow-like sort of qualities. Very, very synthy, very progressive, but also very technical, and not at all without intensity. The intensity was just a little bit different than a Phrenelith or an Imperial Triumphant or something. There's a whimsy to their music, and there's just, I feel like there's little touches of like fairy wings on so many of their images and the way they create scope and scene in their music. So, of course, very ethereal, but nothing felt like so ethereal that it would needed to be sort of background music or it was boring. I wanted to catch every nuance and every bit of what was going on throughout the album, starting off with the gorgeous In the Midst of May, just kind of, you know, almost seasonally springtime sort of, I mean, it's called In the Midst of May, duh, but transports me to some sort of field of flowers before it's really hot out, sort of renewal, awakening. It kind of is a refreshing, beautiful way to start the album. Some of their guitar tones remind me of some older, or prod Devin Townsend project era dev stuff, which I'm a huge fan, obviously. So love anything that reminds me of him. There's certain, again, a lot of this is very major and stuff. A lot of their music is major and whatever, but there are some surprises later in the album on songs like Dover Hendrix, where they also explore some slightly more chaotic and slightly more dissonant tones as well. All very, very rich, very, very full. And there's even the moment, there are moments that also sound kind of like Enslaved, which we all know. That's one of my favorite, another just die-hard favorite band. The final track is spectacular. I think it's 16 minutes. I think it's the last song, the title song. Let me see, the last song. Yeah, Keys to the Palace is the final song and the title track. I remember thinking when I was listening to that song, from the 10-minute mark on especially, that it was we're peeking our head into Alice in Wonderland's, that rabbit hole, or that whatever foot of the tree or whatever she falls into. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about to fall into something really mystical, magical, freeing, scary maybe, but yeah. And even that descent in those gestures as the album is closing too is pretty remarkable. And I just knew from the minute I heard it, I think it came out in March, I was like, oh my God, this is definitely one for the year. And they came through on tour a couple of times and I just couldn't make it work. But yeah, Dessiderium is another band that I'm excited to see what they are continuing to grow into. I love their painterly, elegant style, and Keys to the Palace is just, it's art. It's all art. All music is art, but this is one of the most tangibly artistic albums I've heard, and I'm very grateful that I got to experience it this year. Every year there are albums that I call them the punch albums. The albums that kind of come crashing into my speakers, and they kind of wake the year up, because I think there's so much. And my favorite season is winter. I love winter. I love reflective, atmospheric, escapist, moody kind of music. But there is something to be said for something that kind of jolts and brings that lightning bolt of energy to kind of get ready for the warmer weather, get ready for the summer, whatever the next season's going to be. And to me, Allegion's record this spring was the big first power punch for 2025. Again, because some of the other albums from the earlier in the year aren't powerful. It's just a different kind of power. Certainly Imperial has a certain level of power, but it's sort of crazed and different. But sort of just your sort of driving, consistent beat, riff heavy, exciting, fast type stuff. I feel like Allegion brought a really powerful, infused the year with a lot of energy. I think they came out with the Ossuary lens in April. Just a wonderful record, very creative too. I think they always have like euphoric, sort of heavenly guitar harmonies they do together. And so beautiful guitar harmony, very almost Revocation adjacent. I think, was Dave part of Allegion at one point? There's some sort of crossover, I think, with Revocation. That the guitar harmonies were just magnificent and beautiful and just so tight. Really nice flow on the record. The melodies on Chaos Theory were beautiful. I think something that really stuck out to me in this record, in addition to just how beautifully it flowed, there were some very interesting, almost acoustic guitars, one of which sounded almost flamenco-like or something. I don't remember what song that was. But some very interesting sort of incorporations of guitar technique and guitar tone that even involved some acoustics that were just lovely and sort of modern and fresh. So loved that. Wake Circle Above was one of my favorite songs on the record, as was, again, the opener, Refraction, just comes at you hard and fast. Chaos Theory was beautiful. The Swarm is a lot of fun. Scythe is also a great closer, so like really no bad songs. A lot of energy, big punch, and again, some extra creativity points for me for getting very, very, very cool influence, bringing in cool different influences on some of the acoustic guitar parts. So congrats to Allegion, and thank you guys. What a great record. What a great lightning bolt to get going. Oh my goodness. New Gods, New Masters. What a special album. What a great record for 2025. It, like a lot of the ones kind of I've been loving, it's another nod to an existential warning about who's in charge and what that means, and are we coping appropriately with authority, and should we be, and are certain masters and certain gods or demigods ethical? A lot of that stuff kind of comes to mind and came to mind in seeing the title, and even looking at the art, sort of the sort of sentient weird being with all these chords and marionette strings and stuff. But what a powerful record. And kind of some things were, I don't know how to say, some things were expected, right? Some sounds, some of the guitar work, very predictable. Dave's, and he's a master and a god of guitar, so a lot of really consistent, technical, sharp delivery there. But I also heard, like, my favorite songs were, I think my favorite song on the record is The All Seeing, which is a longer track, gets into some jazzier and more sort of exploratory places that some of the singles and stuff won't always do, but really, really, really enjoyed not just the energy in those singles, but in those more exploratory bits and pieces of the album. Certainly songs like Sarcophagi of the Soul, Sarcophagi of the Soul, that was a lot of fun. I actually listened to that one working out a lot this year. And that little hook, that was a ton of fun, and sort of getting into the thrashier bits and things, very on brand for them. But the quality of their work continues to just be really, really consistent. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like some of the records. I want to say more because it deserves everything and more, but I don't know totally what to say other than I loved it. And again, these dystopian themes, these kind of warnings about who's in charge and all that stuff, very timely. I think what was even almost more exciting for me too was seeing Revocation live again. It had been a few years since I had seen Revocation, and they didn't play all of New Gods, New Masters, but they certainly played quite a bit. And I will say, I think one of the best sets from a headliner that I've ever seen. And I've been to so many shows and I've seen so many incredible performances, but I remember I actually I wear my merch in my fitness and at the gym and at dance and stuff all the time. And I remember the night they played, I had a dance rehearsal that I couldn't miss. And I had to go from the studio to the venue, and I had worn a shirt under this one so that I wouldn't stink it up too bad. So I was in the car trying to change out of the undershirt to have this one be on top or be visible on top and not be, I wanted to make sure I represented and everything. And I remember getting there, and Fury Fury was on their last song, so I was sad I missed a lot of them, but I saw the end of Fury and then Judiciary, and then got to see them rip, and it was such a great set. And the All Seeing was part of it, and I think I want to try to learn the All Seeing now, on my own on the piano, because it's just that good. And even songs like Data Corpse and Dystopian Vermin, just quality stuff. The album flows really nicely. I don't know, and it's a great time. It's a representation of all that not just Dave has to offer, but with all of them. The whole band is just super locked in. They always are. And I remember Dave saying, he was making a joke on stage about, my life choices. Sometimes I wonder if I've done the right thing. And I can't imagine the stress of being a full-time touring musician and stuff, but I remember just in my heart being like, Dave, don't doubt yourself. You're doing all the most amazing things and giving us the most amazing music. So I hope you don't doubt yourself too much. But yeah, I'm rambling now, but the New Gods, New Masters record, fucking amazing. I really, really appreciate the Changeling record for maybe a less obvious reason, on top of the musicality and everything. It took me a few listens on this one. I always have respected Changeling, but it took me a minute to get into this album. And sometimes you give up on a record. You don't finish it all the way. You don't listen to it multiple times to kind of get there, quote unquote. But something about it kept bringing me back, even though the first listen wasn't great for me. It's incredibly progressive and it's very majestic, which I love. And it's very, very bass forward, which justice for the bass players. Everyone's touring without them and there's totally valid reasons and whatever, but I love how bass forward this record is. All the songs are sort of big and unapologetic, and they combine a few sounds of a few bands that I really love. And that's, I think, part of why I kept coming back to try to get to the place. And it didn't take a million listens, definitely, but there's elements of Hath in their music, or it's things that remind me of Hath. And I love the way Hath approaches Wall of Sound and power and grit. There are bits that sound like Blood Incantation to me as well. Very exciting. And even just regular kind of tech death kind of things woven into this kind of proggy bass forward sound. So I think my favorite tracks were Falling in Circles, World What World. Oh God, another talk about existential, feelings and things. The title track of the self-titled album, beautiful and wonderful, just like Rivers. And then I loved Abdication. I think the themes and feelings musically and lyrically of surrender in that song were really, really moving. And I love the art on this one too. The red theme and the eye and sort of the interwoven, almost tapestry-like branch, egg, nest sort of imagery was really powerful. And it's odd, even though there's not a lot of Sonic crossover in these at this point, kind of reminded me of Ulver. There's an Ulver album, I think, called Wars of the Roses or something, that has that red, interwoven sort of imagery on their cover. So from a few years back. So Changeling took me on a real journey with this one, and I appreciate that they commit to what they want to do. They don't care who likes it or who doesn't, or how many listens it takes somebody. They do what they need to do, and they do it really beautifully and with a lot of nuance. Tomarum, so talented, so talented, and they encapsulate so many things. And so I was like Dessiderium, like Fallujah, like bands that I think Tomarum and Dessiderium actually toured together this year. Another gorgeous album, gorgeous. I feel like Tomarum's logo really is a standout as far as pairing so well with the sounds and the soundscapes they emit. The texture in that, I think it's supposed to be the cross section of a log or a tree with all the rings and all the sort of, but it's also like a sun or like some sort of celestial thing with rays. I think that complexity and that texture and that grittiness and that detail orientation really comes through in their music. They strike me as like the next, or as we all kind of get older and stuff, are going to be like up there with in that very technical Zenith Passage kind of space, but also again with that gorgeous atmosphere like Fallujah and bands like that. Beyond Obsidian Euphoria, the name of the record from this year, they had teased it quite a bit on social media, and some of the singles and stuff, even the playthroughs and the clips of the playthroughs were all very, very, like Shallow Ecstasy, I think, was the first single. We knew we were going to get something very special, and it is. It's very, very forward-thinking, very forest-like, escapist. Very little notes, just very much. I'm looking at the lead guitars are beautiful. I thought that the transitions and the contrasts from Shallow Ecstasy into Shed This Erroneous Skin was one of the most beautiful transitions of the year. The Final Pursuit of Light, an incredible sort of cinematic kind of track. And I'm trying to think, what else do I have for them? I don't have many notes really, just that it was a stunning, beautiful record, and I knew from the minute we heard Shallow Ecstasy, and as we kind of got forward and got the full picture of it, it's very special. And I think we'll see and hear hopefully more tours from them, because I remember I whined on their Instagram when one of their rounds of touring this year didn't cover, anything close to where I live, and I was like, you guys, we want to see it, we want to see you, and they're like, we're so sorry, we're gonna try like later this year, and of course they did later in the year, and I couldn't go for another reason, so I felt like a huge asshole on that front, but they're also young. I think a lot of this year, I mean, I have some, obviously there are more veteran or sort of more senior-ish bands, I guess, but there's a lot of young bands this year that I'm really just like, I'm so excited to see how this continues to grow. So yeah, Tomarum, beautiful. Beyond Obsidian, Euphoria, it was a euphoric listen. I wish I had more to say, more praise, but I kind of just loved it, and it was beautiful, and all their details, they don't go unnoticed, and I'm gonna do better next time when you come through. Sort of a departure, not exactly the most metally, super heavy album, but there's a band I discovered in 2025 called Atom Juice, and their album came out, I think it's a self-titled, right? Yeah, the self-titled album, Atom Juice by Atom Juice, came out in July, and it was just a breath of fresh summery air, and it really struck me because I love Tame Impala, especially their old stuff, and this album really took me back to Inner Speaker, and I can't believe Inner Speaker came out almost 16 years ago now, but that sort of floaty, escapist, sort of psychedelic rock bedroom kind of energy they bring, and it's not the most technically dense, music, but it is very atmospheric, and it's very light, and like the song titles, I mean, I liked all the songs, but I especially liked the songs, I feel weird saying it, the song Dead Hookers, and then the song Gubu, and the song Hercules. Really lovely, really fun, a short album, short songs, but sort of takes you back to that, at least for me, when Inner Speaker came out, I was in high school, and just back to that time of just innocence and warmth, and I don't know, just kind of not childlike or teenage in a bad way, but that innocence that I don't always have when I listen to music now. So really appreciated them, and I need to look into them and learn more about them, but I would recommend giving Atom Juice a listen if you enjoyed any old Tame Impala stuff back in the day. Love and Oceans. They are in a similar sort of camp for me as like the Dessideriums, the Tomarums a little bit. Very intricate, very powerful but delicate, sort of very detail-oriented music. They're very intricate, they're very experimental, very atmospheric, which I always love. And it's black metal as opposed to maybe mellow death or tech death or whatever. But it's just, it's beautiful. It's always so beautiful. And they're from Finland. Their album this year was called Regeneration Itinerary. Even the way that falls off my tongue, it's got that the absolute detail, like there's so much minutia and so much attention to each little root to tip, fingers to toe, like Regeneration Itinerary. And what an idea, What are the tools or what are the sounds that are going to help me refresh and reset and all that stuff? So very, very lovely. Came out in May. Very much a nice thought when it comes to renewal and spring and all that. Very on brand for them. Not a ton of departures from what they normally do, but I don't mind because they're always experimenting. So even though they have a certain lane they stay in. They're always pushing just enough for me to stay pretty interested and engaged. Very echoey. They have that sort of, I call it the Follow the Reaper edit, where it's like that, just the sounds are bouncing off of a major, dropping off some kind of icy wall and making that super echoey. So very echoey, very elegant. Some of the extra, they layer the synths beautifully, and they have some industrial things they throw in that make it kind of fun and edgy and modern, unexpected at certain points. And then they have some segments that remind me of old Equilibrium, that folk metal band, I think from Germany, maybe. And in their second track and the fourth track were my favorites. Second track, I'm going to do my best here. Phrenelith Itinerary. I'm so sorry. I don't think that's Finnish. That must be another language. Maybe it's Norwegian or something. There's a really epic, very cool time change in that song that makes me think of like a hard pivot that Equilibrium would do back in like 2003. So really enjoyed that. And then the fourth track, The Form and the Formless. Again, just love those themes, the wordplay, and it reflects in the music. Just a really lovely, complicated, challenging set of ideas about taking shape and being shapeless, moving and being motionless. These kind of oxymoronic themes that are just lovely for the ears. And then certainly, even though they're not really a ton of clean singing, just beautiful kind of poetic thoughts as well in that whole thing. So just a lovely, reflective, detail-oriented, tactile, beautiful, echoey record that, and Oceans, they're great. They're gorgeous. They do a lot of wonderful things. And I'm grateful that they are continuing to do what they do. It feels like Abigail Williams kind of sneaks under the radar each time they put new stuff out. And certainly they're on social media, they announce stuff, and they're not literally hiding, but they seem so low key as people that I'm always having to remind myself, don't forget, A Void Within Existence was one of the most stunning records of the year. They're very kind of like And Oceans. They're very committed to what they do, and they push a little, but they don't push too far outside. And what they manage is still always beautiful enough and intriguing enough to keep their fans really excited and entertained. And A Void Within Existence, very much like them, it's a devastating, very heartbreaking, but cathartic and beautiful and elegant album. The art is devastating on its own. Like when you see that, you're like, oh man, like I know no rainbows and sunshine here, but compositionally, tonally, just a beautiful, atmospheric, escapist, angry, sad, expressive, beautiful record. My favorite songs. Then the songs do sort of work. These types of, I think, atmospheric black metal, wall of sound kind of records, listening to them all at once is much more therapeutic than trying to listen to them as individual songs. And so the whole record is what I would always say, please just listen to all of it. But my favorite songs, if I had to pick, were Non-Existence and Talk to Your Sleep, which in the context of, again, kind of like the Buried Realm, like finding those holes in our existence and finding those places where, whether it's the government or the way people treat others or racism or whatever, like there are these empty caverns of despair and inappropriate, not respectful behavior and stuff that in our wider world needs a lot of improvement. And so I wouldn't shout out the Abigail Williams discography as something to listen to if you want to feel better about things. But if you're willing to think about things and think about the world and think about where humans experience pain, it's a very, very, in its own way, healing and therapeutic band and music, and it's of the void within existence was a really powerful message in a year like 2025 specifically. So beauty, tragedy, I mean, that's art, right? 1914 is, it's kind of like listening to Abigail Williams, like, get ready to cry, or at least be willing to think about some of the darkest, ugliest, most appalling things that humans can do to one another. I would say 1914 has more of that, what humans do to each other, evilness, versus maybe in Abigail Williams thinking about their music is more kind of inner, I think of inner demons and things listening to them. But when I saw they were going to have another record, I don't know if it was a full album or an EP or what, but Virbus Unitis bonus, which I looked at the translation. It actually it means good for the United Forces. So it's like not maybe a terribly sad message or a terribly sad title. Whenever their music comes, I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I know I want to hear it, and it's always so worth any discomfort to listen to, but my God, is it devastating. And it, a lot of focus obviously on World War I, and they're from Ukraine, you know, so it's like, I've listened to them, maybe this is their fourth album or LP or EP or whatever that I've heard of them since I've found them. So I've been in their orbit for a little bit. And you would think, oh, how many ways can you talk about World War I, or, you know, in a crass sort of way, but each time they do, and they bring out these riffs and the voiceovers and the insertions of the old radio and stuff, it's like, it's chilling to the bone in a way that, even though I was born like I am so bad at math, 80 something years after it all ended, like I feel guilty, like I did something wrong, and how could we let this happen, you know? And I think it's just, I feel like their mission is not even to just celebrate and never forget, quote unquote, but to really remind us we need to be fucking good to each other. We need to be kind. We need to be thoughtful, not just about ourselves, but about our neighbors all over the world. And certainly we all can't change the world, and we all can't save governments from fighting each other and stuff. But I don't know, whenever I listen to 1914, I think, how can I do better? I want to be a better person. I want to be a kinder person, because we can't keep having these cycles of human butchering of each other. So I don't know, I'm getting very dramatic right now, but I just think it's a stunning record, and it's always a big commitment. I have to be in a certain headspace to listen to 1914, and this is no different. But nonetheless, all of the songs, I mean, I can't even really pick one. There was one riff that I loved, but I don't know, I don't want to waste time now, but there were several riffs that were just so evocative of, the only way I can just sort of make a comparison is like, there's a band that I think is no longer active called Sarpanatomb, and they have an EP that focuses on high medieval crusades, and it's called the Fidelium EP. If you listen to the Fidelium EP, there are some haunting, dissonant riffs that are trying to evoke the horror of the Muslims and the Christians fighting each other in Jerusalem. And that's the level of trauma I hear in some of these riffs that 1914 has put out in all their records, but certainly this last one. But it's also so beautiful and so heavy, and, you know, you still headbang and stuff because it's excellent music, but it is just like, my Lord, what have we done? And how can we try not to do it again? So, and I've just sent my hopes and thoughts that their country and the devastation they've lived through settles at some point soon, because nobody deserves that stuff. And the fact that they're still creating for us in the middle of that, and so many Ukrainian bands are, and then bands all over the world, bands in very difficult and countries that are enduring very difficult circumstances. I just thank you so much for your willingness to be creative and brave in a time like this. And this record really, really moving, really powerful. And Insatiable Violence, I was an insatiable consumer of that. Wow, Cryptopsy. And I think I've heard mixed opinions on this record. A lot of positive, of course, but I've heard some pretty strongly worded disappointment with this record, and I don't know why. To me, it has everything. It has everything that they already offer as far as super fast, super technical, very clean, very excited kind of music. And I forget the frontman's name. I know he's Ali. No, I don't know. I'm mixing stuff up. He is the nicest guy, and he's the most dynamic frontman for a more, again, that kind of leaning slightly into the more classic death metal with the technical stuff. It can be a little bit sort of monotone from the vocals at times, or it can be like you have your highs and then you have your deep lows, and that's kind of it. They are the delivery of everything has such energy. It has it has power metal energy, even though it's a not power metal band. and Insatiable Violence, like in my notes, I just have perfection. It's a perfect record in every way. Wild, insatiable, crazed tech death, but there's that old sort of death metal tuning that we love so much. The intricacy of the song construction left me so inspired and curious. And then, I don't know, I don't know, and I can't pretend like I know all of Cryptopsy's back catalog. If there are complaints about them not being what people are used to or whatever, I can't speak to that. I've only started listening to them 1 or 2 albums ago, so I can't claim to know the whole history and the whole sonic history, but just had such a ball listening to it. And then I got to see them live. They came with Nihil and Cognitive and the guys and some other folk, Judiciary maybe. I'm getting some of these tours mixed up. Got to see them in all their glory, do a lot of these new songs. Unbelievable. So exciting. So inspiring. So this was a perfect record in my opinion. Perfect record. Another beautiful self-titled album from this year. Rivers of Nihil. They've been getting so much incredible press for this record, and it is so well deserved. In my notes, I have under this album title, I have obviously, of course, it was going to be one of my favorites on my little list as well. There's a lot of discussion. I've seen quite a bit of discussion in blogs and online about sort of what they are and how they've changed and what they are now versus what they were on Monarchy versus what they were, on this or that or whatever. And there's a lot of discourse about the work and everything, and I frankly don't care what they are, because what they do is so powerful and so heartfelt. Whether it's live or in the studio version or on a music video, they really leave it all out in the field, and in a way that, everybody does, all these amazing bands do, but Rivers has almost made me cry before, live, and not just because I love the song so much, but because I could hear in Andy's vocals, or I could see in Biggs's face, or I could see the way Brody leaned into his guitar. They feel this with their whole hearts and minds and souls and bodies, and again, everyone does, but there's something about what they've been through and the way they've been criticized and the way they've been judged, and people have tried to box them into a corner. It's but listen to them, listen to the passion. And there's this whole tech death versus post metal versus I don't care. My favorite songs for sure are Dustman and Evidence, but it's a remarkable album start to finish completely. You can listen to the whole thing and be so satisfied. I think American Death is haunting. House of Light has made me cry more than a couple of times. And of course, the Suborbital Blues, we heard that single years ago now. I want to say Suborbital came out in 23 as like an individual single, but I think, and I was lucky to meet them and see them around the time the album dropped, and they played most of the album, not the whole thing straight through, but a lot of it was in that set, and I got to do the meet and greet, and they said, it's been a lot, trying to look at, without getting overly political and stuff, just, it's a lot going on, and it's fucked, and it's sad, and I'm pissed, and this is what we made, and I just think that's so commendable and so real. One of the best parts about the metal world and the rock world to me is we're not hiding. We're not acting like it's all okay and it's all gonna be okay. And I think that's so beautiful. You need to escape sometimes. You need to feel like it's gonna be all right sometimes. But there's a level of responsibility and honesty in their music and in this album that is just, there's not a great solution in the macro sense. But it's okay to just feel what is, and what is frustrating. So commendable, amazing. The production, again, another bass-heavy, bass-forward sound. Love seeing Biggs. He gives it all on stage. Love seeing a bass player that's leading. And again, all the heavier, more technical songs and bits and riffs and stuff, spot on. The cleans, breathtaking. The composition, some of the more power choruses and stuff, no cheaper or no less than the super dense parts. And I love that it's a self-titled record. They're like, this is us, So, you go, Rivers of Nihil. What do I even say? What do you even say? They've done it again, They've done it a fucking again. Goldstar. Try new Goldstar. Like, from the minute that little jingle starts, you just know. And again, their Imperial's bombast, their talent, their uniqueness, their distortion, everything. It's just from head to toe, from root to tip, to down to the tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes. It's everything. I don't even know what to say. You know what I mean? Even when the singles dropped, Hotel Sphinx and what was the other one? Eye of Mars. I think Eye of Mars came first. Just knew we were going to be in for another just masterful, beautiful, intense treat. Avant-garde completely. They're so incredible. And the arc of the record, well, I guess I should correct myself. The jingle is not at the beginning of the album, it's in the middle, but still. Yeah. All of every single song is incredible. The rhythm changes. So I read some blogs that said this was their most accessible album to date. I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think it was just as complex, if not more, especially percussion-wise. There were certain, changes that Kenny did that it's like, whoa, wait, hang on. I got to rewind and hear how we get there. But unbelievable. And I got to see them, I don't remember, when did Goldstar come out? Did it come out in April? No. Oh, it came out in March. That's so crazy. I guess I'm blurring stuff together. Because a lot came out in the summer. A lot came out in June too. So I'm like, I don't remember. But yeah, I got to see them in concert and meet them for the very first time around, I think it was in February or March. So around the time, in fact, our show may have been one of the days close to the release or the release day. I don't even remember now. But got to meet them, got to do pictures and sort of tell them in person how much I admire and appreciate their music. And seeing them I remember Zach said to me, it's going to be a maximalist 33 minutes because they were not headlining. It was the Mayhem tour, so they were not headlining, but they could have and maybe should have. But and I was like, okay, and not that any of their work is minimalist, and I've seen them a million times now. It's never like chill, but it was. And I remember I was like, I'm so excited. I just don't want the 33 minutes to go too fast. And of course they did, but insane. And yeah, Gamora, I think Gamora Nouveau, he had said was one of his favorites of the new album, and it's stunning. But again, I love this. Eye of Mars is incredible. Hotel Sphinx is incredible. The Pleasure Dome, Lexington Delirium. Like there's no notes, only gratitude. So, yay, Goldstar! So excited, so happy, so grateful I got to see it this year in vinyl, digitally, and live. So I've been a Fallujah fan since 2011. Every year that I've been doing these videos, if they have a record that comes out, it's always on my list. Even the ones that aren't as popular, maybe, they always make the list, and there's no way they won't. But I would say Xenotaph in 2025, spectacular. Just kind of like some of the other ones. What do you even say? You know, it's so beautiful. It's an incredible representation of where the band is, as personnel wise, where the band is like dialing into. I've seen the lineup changes from 2011 on, and it's been a lot of different folks, and this feels like a solid, grounded, deeply wonderful collaboration. And the album, the story it tells, the journeymanship of everything, it's stellar. It's beautiful. It's beautiful in so many ways. Kind of like Dessiderium and Tomarum. It's got those painterly touches, but a little bit more ferocity than some of their work. Not that there's no right or wrong. Really compelling narrative about this sort of space demon incubus thing and a human, and what they go through together, and then how they separate, and just a really compelling, beautiful, heartbreaking tale woven into these beautiful epic guitar and bass and drum and synth and piano pieces that just, it takes all of the stuff we love about them, that their atmosphere, their technical skill, and it really blossoms. It really blossoms. Like all the colors on the art have these sort of weaving gradient floral kind of tones, and it's almost like, to me, even though the figure on the cover is not the blooming, it's them as a band blooming, it feels like this coming of age and coming of era and coming of now's our time. And it's always been their time, but like, you know, kind of getting into that next iteration with all three of them, plus the folks that work on the drums and bass and stuff. Just a wonderful, wonderful album. And Xenotaph, the song, is my number one played song of 2025. There's an embarrassingly high amount of minutes that I listened to that song in 2025, and it just came out in June. So I also learned Xenotaph on the piano this year, so I have a very special, it was a big moment for me just working on my own craft to kind of incorporate this beautiful album into what I have been studying on my own. And it's just a really moving, really thrilling, complete, epic album. So, and they came on tour with the Zenith Passage and Entheos and Tracheotomy this year, and that was one of the most incredible shows I've ever seen. And the Flesh Prevails tour the other year was amazing. All the other times were amazing too, but it feels like just a very special era for them, and I'm just grateful to witness it. Thanks again, everybody, for a really amazing year. Thank you to all the bands, all the touring you guys did, you guys and gals did. Thank you. By osmosis, I always want to shout out the families who give up and share their people with us in the world. Thank you guys for all that, all the sacrifices everybody makes. And for myself and for my own YouTube stuff, thank you guys for anyone who liked or followed or commented, who came and joined me on a Twitch stream. I'm slowly kind of working on improving the quality of that. And I put out some of my own videos this year that were big kind of stretches as far as my own skills. And so I think I got lots of support on my blood incantation work and support on my Zenith passage work and all my Fallujah covers and some of the stuff that was just really challenging music. But I'm really glad I forced myself to try to do it. And anyone who gave me a follow or a comment or a shout on Instagram as well. Thank you guys so much. And I also, before kind of wrapping up the year too, I also wanted to thank the bands that even gave us singles. I can't remember everybody, but I know the band Abraham gave us a really fabulous single, and then Zenith Passage gave us Fleshbound Reliquary right here at Clutch at the end of the year. And we got to see that live, which was like, real monsters, amazing, yes, so even the bands that gave us singles or short sort of teasers on what they're working on, I know that's got to be a lot of stress and stuff too. So just thank you guys. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the holiday season and a safe, quiet, gentle start to 2026. And I certainly will be seeing you on Twitch and on Instagram and here on YouTube. So thank you so much. Blessings, and have a wonderful end of the year.